Welcome to the Lounge Room Podcast, a discussion disaster.
Oh, well, that was. This feels a little awkward. I'm not sure why.
That's because it's like sex. It's because we're doing it for the first time.
Speak for yourself, Chris. Speak for yourself. Anyhow, now that the mandatory sex joke is out of the way, can we start?
It was the opening episode. We had to have one.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So, shall we start with news on Catalonia?
I guess so. As I said before the podcast started, I don't think I'm qualified to speak about this, but we can try.
Well, I can bring up news thingies, but let's hand over to Kiki.
Well, Catalonia is quite the clusterfuck.
That's putting it mildly.
Indeed. Following the current situation, to quote to sum up what the Prime Minister of Spain said, he's basically asking what the heck just happened. Because, yes?
I think we're all doing that.
Yeah.
Because nobody's quite sure what Catalonia actually did, because it declared independence. A declaration of independence was signed by a majority in the parliament, but at the same time, it suspended said independence, as the Wikipedia joke said, 8 seconds later.
Yep.
Because...
the shortest declaration of independence ever.
Indeed. Though that was promptly removed from Wikipedia. But either way...
Very good at anti-vandalism that way.
Yeah.
Nobody's quite sure what happens. My thought on the matter is that it's something very similar to what happened in 1931, when Catalonia once again declared the Catalan Republic, and a few days later they joined Spain. But as an autonomous community, I think it's merely a bargaining chip, saying
what you're telling me is
we can always
the
undo this.
Process of Catalonia. This happens every few decades, and we addressed.
It's happened 3 times so far.
Yeah. It's probably their way of gaining concessions then.
Absolutely. But speaking of concessions, it's also interesting to look at where their support came from. Very recently, you might have noticed that the Basque terrorists, which were quite a subject in Spain for many years, handed over their weapons and demilitarized themselves. Well, at the same time, we're getting support from Navarre, where the Parliament of Navarre denounced the Spanish government's de facto takeover of the Catalan devolution and urged to stop its repressive approach. And the Basque Autonomous Community declared, to quote them, sympathy and support for the referendum, and strongly criticized the Spanish government's stance on the issue. It's interesting that they're still getting support from them, and not just them, also from Galicia, where a 3,000 people march happened in support of Catalonia. What's interesting about that is that Prime Minister Rajoy is a Galician. So apparently not even his own people agree with him.
Well, I suppose as Prime Minister he has to and he's a Conservative Prime Minister, isn't he?
Absolutely.
So as a Conservative Prime Minister, it is his raison d'etre to be a unifier and a nationalist and all the rest of it. It's basically, if he doesn't do that, then he has no political cachet as a Conservative.
He's basically Conservative.
Even though he's doing it as in the most fucked up way possible, he's still serving his constituency.
Well, apparently his own constituency, Galicia, does not agree with him, but apparently he's also conservative in everything, including intelligence. However...
well, most politicians are, but that's another story.
What is interesting is that he's getting very strong support from the EU, including Juncker. I guess he's been drinking again, because while everybody seems to be saying that this is an internal Spanish matter, at the same time they say that they're supporting Spain. And personally, I find this a little bit strange. I understand that the EU wants a united Spain. However, I would expect them to also very strongly criticize what the Spanish police did, because I think that's not acceptable in a 21st century Western European state.
that did smack of Franco and the 70s, and
Absolutely.
Not
it
just
was
the
not.
response, but even the EU response seemed a little out of place.
Mm,
Like, wasn't
it
it
did.
right before the I can't pronounce his title, the Catalan leader? He was making his announcement, like his press conference or whatever.
hmm
It wasn't like half an hour before that he was in a meeting with an EU representative.
Well,
I believe so. I think that's why they were delayed somewhat.
It seems strange that the EU. Okay, I'm not European. I'm not sure where I stand on this. Like, where I can stand on this, rather. But it seems that maybe a hands-off approach would have been a little better.
well, you don't need to stand on it. The Spanish police will do that for you.
Oh yes, of course.
I think,
Yeah.
if I may, I think what the European Union is scared of is another Brexit. They're scared that if Catalonia splits, they may not join the EU, and it may force Spain out of the EU.
It's true, though. Personally, I see some sort of need for strength within the EU at this time, at the end of Brexit, because the EU currently needs the main members to be very pro-European.
They do.
Since
Farage's fuck up.
Well, since the whole integration speed up, because we are heading to some sort of cliff face where we're going to decide who's going to be within the central area of the EU and who's going to be on the periphery.
Yeah.
Like
So they do need as much
I
support
wouldn't
as
want
they
to put
get.
it in. Okay, sorry. You go first.
Oh, I'm just saying they do need as much support as they need, and Spain is a big player in the EU. However, interesting their internal politics may be.
That's true.
I wouldn't maybe put it in such blank terms, but the way I see it is that post Brexit and everything, there's a reshuffling of power maybe in the EU. Of course, Germany and France want to hold on to what they have, but everyone is trying to use bargaining chips to see what kind of thing they can get in instability.
That's it.
Changes
They're
a lot.
trying to find their little boosts and their little power gains.
Which brings me to another piece of news, which I didn't put into the news in our folder.
Go. Just go.
The institutions which were up until now based in the UK are up for grabs.
That's it.
And many cities have submitted their request for it. The problem is most won't be getting it because the primary decisive factor that apparently the EU is using to decide where the new institutions will be is they give their employees the choice of where they would like to be based. And when they ask you, oh, we have these candidates, would you rather be in Paris or Bratislava? You're going to get the answer, Brati what?
Exactly.
So instead of making use of these bargaining chips to bring into close integration the periphery members of the EU, they're basically going to
centralize.
It's going to go to Brussels, it's going to go to Paris, it's going to go to Frankfurt. Let's be honest here.
That's it. It's going to centralize, and it's going to alienate the outer countries again. And they will rightly say that it's basically becoming the Western European Union.
Absolutely. It's not that there was an interest for these institutions. Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, declared that they would like to host. I think it was the banking institution. And though I may say it's probably not the perfect place to host it, at the same time, let's realize that Zagreb and Croatia is a serious contender to become a Eurozone country very soon, within the next few years. And they are a very pro-European country.
That's it. One of the few in the Balkans.
Maybe as opposition to Serbia, if anything. Instead of making use of this, they're probably letting us an opportunity slip away.
Yeah, I have to agree. It seems strange that instead of trying to bring more people into like the pro-European stance, they're taking actions that would alienate these periphery countries. Like you said, like the Croats who might be European Union members in the future, or maybe like even people that aren't seen as big players in the European Union. Like everyone basically but France, the Belgium, and Germany at this point. Like people after Brexit, there were talks in many places about what if we had an exit of our own, and that's the thing that should be the pressing issue for the EU at the moment.
Well, since, as I mentioned before, the Czech elections are coming up next week, it's a very big issue here. And it looks like, though it may not be directly anti-European, but it looks like our next prime minister will definitely not be pro-European.
More on the fence than anything.
And it's maybe something that the EU should be paying a little bit more attention to, I believe.
That's like the biggest outcome of Brexit. It's not like maybe nothing directly associated with Brexit at this point, but so far the biggest thing we've seen is that the normalization of this anti-EU stance, maybe. It's becoming more and more common, or at least more and more accepted.
To sum up, I would probably say that the big talk of reforming the EU post-Brexit, though Brexit isn't here, let's be honest, yet. But the big talk about reforming it is so far not shaping up too much. At the very least, all we hear is repetition from Macron, but that's about it. So that's how I view, and I think that EU needs to step up their game.
And May's dithering. It may not even happen that they'll be able to pull out in time, so to speak.
That's what she said. Either way, with this sexual joke, let's end this segment and move on to the next part.
All right.
Do we want to continue the news, or do we want to move on to...
There's two ways we can take this, the way I see it. Either we can go into the next news thing on the list, or we can go from one separatist movement to another and talk about New Caledonia.
We could, why not?
Why not? It's consistent, and it's more in my area of the woods, I suppose.
And, of course, we can't miss up that beautiful segue I just pulled off.
Yes.
Definitely.
So, Nouvelle Calédonie.
New Caledonia is a part of France today, and to bring you up to the situation happening there, there is to be an independence referendum held in 2018, whether New Caledonia will stay a part of France or become independent. The interesting thing is that it's not the first independence referendum. There was another referendum held in 1987 during the post or end of Cold War decolonization era, and an overwhelming majority of 98.3% voted to remain of France. However, the referendum was also boycotted by their independence movements, and UN observation was not permitted. So it's definitely not as clear-cut as the results may indicate.
And that's the whole point of a boycott. The same thing happened in the recent Puerto Rico statehood referendum thing. When one whole side of the debate boycotts, it throws into question the entire result. Even if they had participated, it would have been a clear result and may have not been one that was favorable to them.
Exactly, it's also a dirty tactic.
Yes.
It is.
Either way, the new referendum was voted by the French Parliament. It was permitted. Cough Spain, maybe you could learn from that. And it's supposed to be done in a way that is incontestable, to quote the French. However, once again, there is trouble with the electorate, where the Canucks, apparently the natives of New Caledonia, Canucks, not the Canadians, are not automatically included in the electoral roll. They have to request to participate in it. I read a little into it, and it's complicated with who exactly does have the vote automatically, who doesn't, etc., etc., etc. Either way, it's definitely not looking once again to resolve the issue.
Yeah.
Is it likely that there'll be another boycott by one side?
I don't know about a boycott, but what is being predicted is that New Caledonia will stay a part of France. Whether that's because of the actual results or whether it's because, once again, the referendum will be questionable, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
It seems that these past few years have been the years of referendum.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's kind of strange. I didn't know you at the time that the Brexit vote was happening, and it seemed to me that ever since then we've been in a referendum crazy time over the world. Yeah. But that's mostly just because I've been more aware of it, maybe nowadays, or the news and media has been more aware of it.
I'd say that there definitely is some sort of movement. Of
there
the
has
general
definitely,
public. Yeah.
There has definitely been in the last 3 or 4 years an uptick in referenda and referendum movements.
Yeah, thinking back to at least even the Scottish referendum a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems a strange way to act things out, like to do government, but it does start, if nothing else, it starts a national debate.
Dialogue. Yeah.
Dialogue.
Yeah.
People start to talk about it, and then maybe something will come for it, maybe something won't. But either way, the talking about it seems to serve a purpose, people who call for the referendum.
Definitely. Anyhow, we can move on to the next subject. Shall we finish the last news subject or move on?
Let's finish news. Why not?
May as well.
Let's to quote Jonathan Pye, let's do the fucking news. I believe this one is originally Chris's, so go ahead.
Yeah, Trump and his IQ tests. This is becoming something that seems to be an issue with Trump. Is whenever somebody disagrees with him, he pulls out this, well, I'm smarter than you and I want to do an IQ test to prove it. And all I can think of is, why? We all know he's not exactly the smartest brick in the
I don't think it's
wall.
more like, it's not like a natural response to him to be smarter than everyone. It's about ego.
Yeah.
If someone says... Go ahead.
Sorry, be warned, dear listeners, this is going to be a disgustingly liberal debate.
Oh yeah. We're all three of us are fairly liberal.
Yeah, I don't think. Okay, of course, I don't have insight to Trump's mind that someone else doesn't have.
No,
of course. But, like, the way I see his response,
that way leads to madness.
Yeah, exactly. The way I see his response, the way I read his responses to everything in the past year, or even farther than that, is that when someone says something that he disagrees with, or maybe hurts his ego,
yeah,
he veers completely to the opposite side.
That's it.
So if someone says he's dumb, he asks to see his IQ test. If someone says he didn't do enough for Puerto Rico, he says we did more than any other president before.
That's it.
If Rubio said he has small hands, he said, I have the biggest hands on earth.
That's it. Another question to debate: does what he say, or rather, is what he says, even founded on some information, or does he just automatically put out information and basically hope that his position will support the information? I mean,
I think it is the latter, honestly.
It's not the first time that he's made a statement that is absolutely unfounded in any way or even untrue, which is another interesting thing, how very readily he adopted himself the whole fake news phrase and way of discrediting others.
Yeah, it's a very good way of deflecting any blame from himself, is to say that it's fake.
What's more worrying, honestly, is that Trump seems to act on every piece of information he gets.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's been more clear that it's several times over the past year that his aides and staff have been saying that we have to manage what Trump sees, or else he'll want to act on it.
Yeah.
Like a child.
It's worrying that, in the ideal world, the leader of the country has information and chooses what to act on and what to leave. Not people working for him decide what he should see, so they decide what he acts on. That is, we're in the backwards land at this point in the US.
On the other hand, everybody was expecting that after the elections, all of Trump's declarations would be more or less election era limited. That after the election, he would calm down, as all other presidents have calmed down. Democrats are more left-leaning during the election, and Republicans are more right-leaning during the election. What they say is usually more charged during the election. I'm sure it would have been the same had Hillary won.
That's it.
However,
all candidates speak to the broader electorate, but they all try and come to the middle when it comes to governing.
Trump seems to be decided that he's going to fulfill his election promises, which is scary. For once, I can say I do not want a president to actually fulfill what he promised, because it's frightening.
Honestly, I've known a few people with dementia, and I think he may be somewhere on that spectrum now. because people with dementia can tend to fixate very quickly on what's in front of them.
Well, we'll have to call up our resident doctor for that to comment. However,
But, yeah,
to get back on
his family history also. There is Alzheimer's in his family history, so it may be that he is on that first rung, which is also a scary option.
To get back on track, what we have written here is his latest, shall we say, spree of decrees and decisions, etc. We have the broadcasting licenses issue, where Trump decides that what he calls fake news, basically anybody not agreeing with him, will be stripped of their broadcasting license, which means CNN, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think what was it? This threat was specifically aimed at MSNBC.
It could have been.
Yes, it was. It was specifically aimed at NBC. Yeah.
Then there's the UNESCO scandal, where apparently UNESCO's quote-unquote pro-Palestinian stance, which is untrue, they're merely being somewhere in the middle, and rightly so, is forcing the US, one of the biggest contributors but also receivers of UNESCO funds, to leave it. And apparently Israel intends to do the same.
Basically, the American right has a strange fetish with Israel. Israel can do no harm in the American right.
Well,
says the Egyptian.
Well, actually, it goes deeper and scarier than that. The American Christian right wants wants Israel to be there because they feel that the Jews and the Muslims will bring about the second coming by starting the apocalypse.
Okay, there are people who believe that, but
there are definitely, and it is,
that's very small minority.
On the other hand,
there are a minority that have a lot of money. That's the scary thing.
It's another part of this thing. It's one of these political, maybe like maxims that can't be denied, or else you're not going to get reelected. Is that Israel isn't the right in America if you're an American right-wing politician, or else small business is the backbone of our economy, and then acts against small businesses. It's just one of these things you have to do as a politician.
That's it.
On the other hand, the American right controls the government. This isn't a huge. It's a huge surprise they left. They're planning to leave UNESCO. But it's not a huge surprise they're going to side with Israel. That's not the surprise.
No.
On the other hand, Israel is also a tool for the US, because a fucked up Middle East is a good Middle East for the US.
That's true too.
They benefit from it. And I'm not trying to demonize the US here. That would be absurd. But it definitely is a strategy that has been employed, and not just by the US. Many European countries benefit from it as well. Though in the late year, past 2 or 3 years, that's not exactly the case with the whole migration situation. The next situation is the Puerto Rico situation, where Trump is apparently claiming that they have done enough and more than enough for Puerto Rico. It absolutely is, but he doesn't see it that way. Let's not forget Puerto Rico is a part of the US, no matter how he may see it.
This wasn't in the notes. I don't have exact numbers. But following the hurricane, like there was a survey done asking how many Americans knew that Puerto Rico was part of the US, and that Puerto Ricans are US citizens. A large majority, well, not majority, a large portion, majority is the wrong word, but like around 25% or something didn't think it was. And the majority of people who answered no were from basically Trump's side of the spectrum.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's it.
People that were maybe maximum high school educated, probably white,
that's
probably lower income.
That's it.
The next part we have is the travel ban, which Trump has been trying to implement since he was elected.
Yeah.
And which is constantly being shot down. If I'm not mistaken, there have been 3 attempts at it so far, and all 3 have been shot down. And apparently it's finally having some results, where Chad, one of the main members of the anti-Boko Haram coalition, is withdrawing from the whole operation, which is a massive problem, because not only is the operation's headquarters based in Chad, they also supply one of the biggest parts of the troops and of the overall fighting force against Boko Haram. Thanks to Chad, Boko Haram's territory has decreased significantly, and now that they are pulling out, the attacks by Boko Haram and in general banditry in the area is increasing.
Increasing, yeah.
And this is all put down to the fact that Trump has decided that Chad is a threat, or rather, in general, that Northern Africa / Middle East is in general a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a problem.
It comes back to you have to have someone to blame if you're a government, especially if you're in particularly Trump's government. There has to be some big baddie that is to blame, and it's easy to blame someone that's very far away.
That's it.
And
a bit like for China.
Yeah, that's it. And populist movements like Trump's always need scapegoats. And at this point, it's starting to have an effect by destabilizing other regions around the world.
And most of all, limiting the effect of what good can be done by the US and other countries because they're alienating people who are their allies. In this case, Chad, the fight against Boko Haram, is their ally. And they're alienating them, and they're backing out now. This is a direct result of US policy.
Well, on the other hand, it is something Trump did promise: America first, and all of these deals, policies, etc. For example, you can see it very well in the Paris climate deal, which, though it does much good for the world, it's not the best for American businesses. Though, of course, you have to take into account what has more value in this case.
Well, it's not good for American businesses according to Trump, but the American businesses themselves say that it's good for them. Which is why a lot of the big businesses were pulling out of his committees after he pulled out of the Paris Accord.
The question is how much of that is popularity, whether the big businesses do well to support Trump's decision or whether they'll benefit from standing against it. But either way, he is doing what he said he would. He's putting America first, no matter what, which is the problem.
Another thing,
and
it seems like this is he has a knee-jerk reaction possibly to things that were Obama era. Let's say if something Obama agreed on, if you're seeing it nowadays with the Iran nuclear deal, if something's Obama era, without really looking into it too much and without maybe not understanding it very well, he wants to back out. It's an instinctual reaction.
That's it.
We're supposed to be doing current news, but I guess it's the first episode and we're just talking about everything at this point.
Yeah.
Speaking of talking of everything, we should move on.
We should. One more point, though.
We should. But one more point, yeah.
So during the Paris agreements, after he backed out, and then the huge public backlash he got in the U.S., just to prove that he didn't know what he was talking about, he said he'd go to talk to Macron about the Paris climate agreement, because he assumed that because of the Paris agreement, it was France's doing.
Yeah, that's it. He did not realize that just because the treaty was signed in Paris that it was unilateral and not French.
That's maybe a bit of information that his team should not have filtered out from the president.
Okay, now Kiki was right. We should move on.
We should move on. How about flag news?
Flags.
Flags. We're a bit more knowledgeable on this, I'm sure.
Oh yes.
We have 3 pieces of news, so why don't we each present one? Since it's from Detox's part of the world, he can start.
Oh come on, no! Don't start me with this. This is just rude.
The alternative is Somalia for you.
I don't think anyone's ever picked the alternative when the alternative was Somalia.
True.
Okay, Mauritania decided to change their flag recently. It was a referendum. Was it this year or was it last year, the referendum?
This year.
This year.
Well, referendum in quotes.
Why are you saying quotes?
Some people say it wasn't exactly a referendum. Some people say it was, one of those things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can also think about what the referendum achieved because the flag was only a part of it. The main part of the referendum is to abolish the Senate and increase the powers of the president.
Basically, it was an Erdogan referendum.
Very
That's
much
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, on to the flag change itself. If I may go on.
So basically, we'll have the flag comparison in the description here, but it used to is the same flag essentially, except instead of just having a green background as it used to, It has two red bands, a top
Why
and
do-
bottom now.
Why don't you read the description?
I don't want to read descriptions. That's just too cryptic. You don't understand.
Well, not all of our listeners, the few of them that there may be, or none at all, will know what the flag of Mauritania looks like.
That's why I said it can be put in the description. I'm not going to describe the flag. They can
shut
look
up.
at it. Press the buttons, okay?
Now, a favorite. I will press your buttons. The favorite. the
Don't do
favorite.
that. Yumi might be
favorite-
jealous.
The favorite thing to say about the flag of Mauritania is that alongside Jamaica, it used to be the only flag which did not contain either blue, red, or white.
Yes.
And
Another
it's-
favorite thing to say about the flag is it looks like a smiley face.
It does indeed,
Mhm.
though not as much as some other flags from the Caucasus.
Yes.
But it's for, at least from my subjective view, it's definitely a shame. Firstly, because of the status. Secondly, because the flag was very good, I would say. And thirdly, because I think that the red clashes significantly with the green. Plus, the explanation for it is extremely kitschy. It's your classic blood of the martyrs.
Yeah.
The efforts and sacrifices the people of Mauritania will keep consenting to the price of their blood to defend their territory. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Red on a flag representing blood has been so overdone that it is just boring
Absolutely.
and trite.
When designing flags or coat of arms, it's always important to remember one thing: you have to be original, and the best way to achieve that is to not use cliche symbolism. Red for the blood of martyrs, white for the peace. I don't know, a dog for loyalty, a lion for fierceness, etc. It simply it's not original. It's cliche.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Flags that maybe stand out in meaning don't have these cliches, and because of that, it makes them better, in my opinion.
That's it. I mean, the Union flag does not have any of this bullshit about the blood of ancient past or whatever. It's just the crosses of the saints thrown together.
And it is Egypt even too. It's a more modern flag than Union Jack, but
hmm
we got ours in the 50s. But the whole point that we have red, white, and black. Surprisingly, red does not mean blood. That is like the time before the revolution, so-called revolution, just military takeover.
Either way, another thing which I really appreciate about the old Mauritania flag is that their design is not the classic stripes, but that it actually is able to use a device in the middle of the flag and look good.
Yeah.
It's a simple flag, extremely simple, but it looks good.
It does.
It's distinctive and it looks good, which isn't the case with many other flags, like the old Libya, let's say. But no, it's difficult to make a simple flag that looks good, especially one using some central device logo or something like that. And Mauritania did achieve this, especially with their original take on the crescent and the star.
Yeah.
Honestly, the style, like, okay, this seems completely random, and I'm sorry, this is how my brain works, but it reminds me of Albania.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It does have it has one symbol that they're playing off of, and it's a unique symbol. Maybe Mauritania is a little less unique than Albania's. I'll give you that. It's the crescent moon and the star, of course, but it does seem original, and it's just the main focal point of this flag, without excess stripes or what have you with other flags.
Well, let's not forget that Albania's flag is a banner of arms.
Yeah.
Which is
a very
one of
old
the
banner.
Indeed, it's one of the major factors in making, let's call it, a single field flags, is often that they somehow derive from arms. And though in this case it's not true, because Mauritania does not have an official coat of arms, it has an emblem, but still it plays along the same lines. But on to the next flag news, which I will dare to present: the Trash Isles. Probably most of you have heard of the situation in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, where literally floating islands made out of rubbish and trash for the Americans, are basically clogging up the ocean, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of environmentalist groups have been looking into. And one very original take on this is a movement of the Pacific Oceans Foundation, where they decided that the best way to do something about this is to register a new country with the UN, a country based on these trash isles. And theoretically, this should put the UN under obligation to clean them up, as ironic as that might sound. However, the flag itself is, as I say, something that should be banned, burned, and its makers drowned.
Yeah, it's not a good flag.
It is a white and blue field divided in a fairly irregular way with a floating bottle. As much. Sorry.
Do we have a version without the waving effect in the flag?
There is none so far.
Really? Is that the only
There
one?
is none. It's very fresh news.
Mm.
Either way,
that's that thing that people use on flags of the world to import their flag design onto, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That wavy background bullshit.
But yeah, it's definitely not the best way to get me on board. I'll say that.
I would change it. I would have it as a white over blue bicolor, but I would have the bottle floating on the white.
Either or, you can just
with the green bottle there.
Half of the bottle showing out of the blue part. Definitely not the 2 shades of blue.
No, definitely not the 2 shades of blue. That's just ridiculous.
Oh,
as a flag design, that is not good, because it is. You can't see what the bottle is at a distance. You'd see the tiny little green triangle, and that's it.
Maybe that's the.
You have to remember, if you just got cut off the bottom part, like the underwater section, it looks like an island, and that's the exact opposite point.
It depends on how you presented the bottle. Maybe you could do it vertically, but maybe that's the whole idea, to get the UN to clean it up, so it doesn't have to hang this flag outside the UN headquarters in New York.
I mean, I can see what they're doing. I mean, they're making it look somewhat like an iceberg. There's a tiny little green island on the top, but the rest of it is just a nasty, horrible plastic bottle submerged under the water. I mean, yeah, okay, that's some symbolism, but yeah, I mean, maybe make the bottle black so that you can see it against the blue.
Either way, we spent a lot of time on the news.
We did.
So let's move on. Just to the trash aisles, I'd like to mention 2 other images which I added to our folder, which is the beautiful money presentation. The seagull inside one of those beer 6-pack holders.
And those plastic rings. Yeah. And
the passport, which is atrocious, because it contains something akin to a coat of arms.
Oh,
with what looks
definitely landscape arms.
Landscape heraldic. I do like the minor references, like the seal intertwined with whatever it is around his throat, with the turtle with again trapped in some sort of rubbish, and the seagull holding up the plastic bottle. But either way, it's not a good coat. It's a logo.
I mean, it's a trashy coat of arms for a trashy country.
But, we can end it on that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, do you want to talk?
Part, since Detox refused Somalia, racist, and I had my trash aisles. Chris, you can go ahead.
So apparently, there's a new region within the planned federal structure of a new Somalia called Mogadishu, and they've got a new flag.
Mogadishu is to be the capital of Somalia.
Somalia. Well, if they can ever find and rebuild the place.
Get their shit together, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a bicolor with a red over blue diagonal and a white shield, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the shield is... It's almost an invisible shield with just an
outline. Dotted outline.
dotted outline, and yeah, I think looks like a lighthouse in the middle with white line.
Maybe they're just trying to be a little less noticeable, because if I'm not mistaken, yesterday there was another bombing in Mogadishu, 20 people dead. So
yeah, not a place you want to.
Just trying to be a little less visible.
Okay.
Possibly.
Out of the 3 flags that aren't that great we've seen today, this is my least favorite. I really don't like this one.
No, it is terrible.
Mostly, it's the clash between red and blue for me. It's a really bad color choice.
It's kind of like a slightly drunk Haiti.
I don't mind the color combination. For me, the worst one was definitely the trash isle. That's a trashy flag. But it's definitely not going to be on my list of wow, look at this flag and take inspiration from it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
at least they're not Liberian.
The less said about Somalia, Mogadishu, and this flag, the better.
The better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was quick Mogadishu, very efficient. So let's move on.
Unlike Somalia.
Let's be honest.
Well, you got to run through Somalia.
Honestly, let's be honest. The reason we're not talking about Somalia is that we don't know anything about Somalia.
Yeah.
Stuff that's closer to home or more relevant to us, maybe we talked about more. Stuff like Trump or maybe the EU. But we know nothing about Somalia. Let's be honest here.
However, Somalia is going to become very interesting vexillologically because they really are attempting a federal structure, as difficult as that may be, and obviously will be. So
Considering
there's definitely new flags coming from there.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to move on to the separatism map?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, why not?
Basically, this map shows different areas of the EU, or just Europe in general, not because it includes Bosnia, but Europe in general. And talking about different parts that maybe want to secede from their parent country, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that was brought up when I last saw this map is that the question, because this question was phrased in several languages, was phrased differently each one, and how you phrase a question is very important to a survey like this.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Going from "Would you want to see your country independent?" to something like "Would you support an independent blank?"
Yeah.
Excuse the answers.
It always does.
The Catalan referendum and the Scottish one were both poorly phrased, to say the least. And if I'm not mistaken, the Venice, I don't know how to say it, Veneto, quote unquote referendum that happened last year was mainly online, but was also sort of questionable considering how the question itself was phrased. Let's take a look at some of these areas which are included in this map. We've got the classic Catalonia, Scotland, blah blah blah. But then there's some less noticeable and perhaps even surprising statistics on here, such as Sardinia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sardinia and Corsica are both very different from their, shall we say, from their home territories.
Yes.
Italy and France.
They're definitely viewed as the homes of the weird by their greater countries.
By the mainland, so to speak. Yeah.
Corsica definitely for France.
It is always the way like that with an island, especially an island with a history as long as these two.
Yeah, and with such separate cultures as these two.
Yeah, they develop separate culture and feel like they are distinct from what you could call the parent company. Parent country. Company, what am I saying?
Company, that's the US. That's the
the US, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, the point is, like, Sardinia and Corsica, well, I didn't expect to see them on this map. I'm not exactly surprised.
No.
I would even say that Corsican separatism is more well-known than Sardinian separatism.
Yeah.
So I'm very surprised by the numbers in Sardinian separatist area. I have no idea what Sardinia would do if it was independent. Collapse?
I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that they're on here, but I am surprised at the relatively low number for Corsica.
Just to explain the numbers themselves, to quote the original creator of this map, a Reddit user called Bezelford, it was created through an average of regional opinion polls, at least 3, those in some cases less, because more than 3 did not exist. It does not contain Belgium, as that was too much of a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
The last thing about this map that's interesting is that the highest number is, of course, in the Republika Srpska, which is the Serbian part of Bosnia.
Mm-hmm.
We can move on. Oh, that's 54%.
Yeah.
No, I'm lying. I'm lying to you. I'm a filthy liar. The highest number is 56% in Veneto.
Yes. Another thing I
Yeah.
wanted to point out before I moved on is look at London's numbers, 12%.
12%. Yeah.
And that is a very much Brexit thing that happened there.
Oh yes.
Very much. That's a skew.
Well, look at how the whole, like, so to say, I'm going to insult someone, intelligent population of the UK, meaning city dwellers, voted. It was basically islands of pro-EU within a Brexit countryside sea.
Yeah.
It's basically all of England, excepting urban areas, or mainly London.
Yeah.
At this point, voted leave.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see this draws a great parallel to the American election, where the urban areas voted Democrat, and all the rest of the country voted Republican.
Yeah.
This is very much a thing that we're probably going to be seeing more and more often. This urban versus rural thing. It's been going on for centuries, of course, but it's only getting worse. I think maybe, or maybe it's more obvious.
I think it's becoming more obvious, and B, there is becoming more of a distinct divide as more jobs centralize in cities.
Yeah, I was living in Nebraska up until a few months ago, and Omaha, the biggest city there, is growing at a huge rate, and not because people are moving to Nebraska. It's because people are moving away from the rural parts of Nebraska to the urban parts.
However, at the same time, it's also important to consider that the difference between the urban and the rural vote doesn't always have to be on the lines of your typical, like, left-wing and right-wing ideology, because you'd think that the city intelligence would vote left, while the rural countryside would vote right. But that's not always the case. If you look at the very recent, or 4 years ago, I say recent because the next ones are coming up next year, Czech elections, current President Zeman, who won the election, is actually a leftist. He was in the Social Democrats before he founded his own party. He is somewhat like Trump in that sense, who is a Republican only by name, and he won the election thanks to the rural vote. He is a leftist, and at the same time, his opponent Schwarzenberg, that name may be familiar because yes, he is a noble, lost. However, his vote came from both the urban dwellers and from the foreign vote. So it's interesting to compare that. It's not always along the typical lines. Maybe you could say along the lines of the intelligent choice. However, at the same time, the upcoming elections, it looks like it's again going to be the same thing, with Zeman facing off against a liberal but right-wing candidate. And many people who feel inclined to the left at the same time will vote for the right-wing candidate, because Zeman is just simply too much of a stain on the left.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to point out that this what you might say, this conflict between the city and the countryside isn't always defined by a right-left ideology.
No.
Yeah.
But it is defined by what people feel as being their populist movement, so to speak. If someone is telling them what they want to hear, they're going to vote for them, as they always do.
Moving on to the next map, because this is dragging on a little bit.
Yes.
We're just going to quickly go over it. This is an alternate history map found on DeviantArt. I am very ashamed because I forgot to say who made it.
No, it's right there. It's
Is
the
it?
title.
Is it?
Erkmar, I think.
By
Erkmar, yes, Erkmar on DeviantArt.
Mhm.
And it's a very interesting map that shows a post fall of the wall East Germany that went slightly different. Basically, it's a scenario where the very extreme elements of the East German society prepared for the fall, and somewhat of a civil war is happening in East Germany. And let's be honest, that's not an impossible scenario.
No.
We had a very similar thing happen in the USSR. It was very lucky that did not turn into a full putsch or into an actual civil war.
Yeah. The only thing that stopped it was basically Boris Yeltsin getting on that tank and basically telling everybody how foolish they were being.
So, while this may seem like a rather wild scenario, I would definitely not dismiss it, and it definitely has potential for expansion and further consideration.
And just to touch on the artistic aspect of it, I think it's a very nice looking map.
Oh,
It
yes.
looks professional.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I could see it in some sort of textbook, if you maybe.
Absolutely.
It does have that textbook feel.
And that's good. People might say take that wrong, but I think textbook feel is one of the good qualities of a map if you're going for maybe historical, maybe modern history
Absolutely.
style.
Certainly.
It looks real. That's what
It,
Yeah. It
in,
gives
in
it
general,
gives you the information that you need.
the aesthetics of a map, as my own work can prove, can often play a vital role in making it seem more plausible, apparently.
That's
because many of my scenarios are completely absurd. Because I enjoy working from the back. I enjoy working from some result and then working back from it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I, on the other hand, work from an event and then butterfly out from that. We're just working opposite ways here.
exactly. But even a crazy scenario can be realistic if the map is well made.
If the map is well made, because it shows you the information as if it was happening.
So on one hand, that's also important to consider, but it's also important to consider what this means for us. I'd say it also means that you should, when reviewing a map, when looking at a map and its plausibility, you should also consider how much of a role the visual part of the map, either good or bad, is playing on your overall judgment. It's also good to take that into.
Okay. Do you want to do the next part, or do you want to skip to section 5?
Well, up to you. I found it extremely interesting with the whole Catalonia thing happening right now, but we can skip it.
If you want to go ahead.
No, skip it.
Okay.
This next part was Chris's, so let's let him take the lead on this one.
Yeah, the noise that hit the U.S. Embassy in Cuba. Apparently, someone's been attacking the American and Canadian diplomats in Cuba with some sort of sound wave.
Oh.
And
Maybe
making
a
them
concert?
ill.
Maybe a concert, or somebody's probably playing rock.
Now, there's a link to the story, and there is an actual sound, and I'm not going to play it because I did play it a little bit, and I got a headache from it, so I'm not going to do it. But yeah, whatever's been doing it, not pretty.
So definitely Lady Gaga music. No, I'm joking. Lady Gaga has some very nice music.
What is the effect of this sound, if you know? Is it just a headache, or is there anything further, like longer term, maybe?
No one said yet.
Ooh.
It's still so new that they've just it's been headaches and nausea and yeah.
Definitely the realm of sci-fi.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean it's not unheard of. The US has been working on sonic weapons for years, and some of them are very effective.
So those are mainly crowd control things, aren't they?
Those are mainly crowd control things, and they do work very quickly and very well.
And the idea was played with a lot during the Cold War. We don't know to what extent yet. Not everything is classified yet, but it was played with. We know that much. I'd like to see if we get more information about this later on.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
Okay.
I was very amused by the next story. I think that's Detox's, so go on.
Yes.
That is
I
detoxes.
found
So.
a nice and like a stereotypical story, and that's nice these days, like more upbeat, if you will.
Hmm.
So Switzerland is, of course, famous for their gold and their watches and their chocolate, right?
Nazi gold.
Okay, that part's the part they want you to forget. If you'd be nice and forget that, please, for this section. So recently, a new study was found. About 95 pounds of gold are flushed down the Swiss sewage system each year.
Yeah. Huh?
This is generally attributed to like large-scale factories where they refine the gold, or maybe
Yeah.
where they make watches with gold.
Hmm.
But the article did state that Switzerland has more gold among its populace than some other countries. And
Yeah.
some of this could have been just like rings and stuff that were lost in the plumbing.
Yeah.
While it's not the majority, it's still more sizable and an issue in Switzerland than most other countries, which is nice and stereotypical and upbeat.
Well,
Like,
if we're
upbeat
gonna be talking about stereotypes, and we're not going to be politically correct, it sounds 95 pounds of gold sounds like they flushed a Roma down the toilet.
Well, the old saying is there's always been money in shit, so.
But this reminds me, a while back I read a story, and I don't know if it was from Switzerland, but I would not be at all surprised, where apparently money was literally flushed down the toilet and blocked the sewers.
Hmm.
And apparently when you don't have enough money, well, you always do need toilet paper.
Yeah.
When you have more than enough money, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's estimated that this gold may be worth about $2 million per year.
Yeah.
So there have been talks recently after the study come out of refining the sewage and getting the gold out of it again.
I mean, compare this. In the UK, you have people talking about fatbergs clogging up the sewers and how you can transform them into clean oil. And in Switzerland, you're wondering how you can get the gold out of people's shit. Why not?
Why not?
Mentioning your story about the flushing money down the toilet. Apparently, gold and about 6,500 pounds of silver, 1.8 million current prices, is also in Swiss sewage. But there's also been apparently last year 2 Spanish women flushed roughly about 100,000 euro down the toilets in Geneva.
No.
So
UBS bank branch and 3 nearby restaurants.
And meanwhile, I read a story about an American woman giving birth in a fast food and trying to flush a baby down the toilet. So I definitely rather flush the baby and keep the money.
Okay, so
Yeah, well, we know you're insane, Kiki.
what we've learned before moving on here is that if you're going to steal any sewage department, go for Swiss.
Oh, definitely. There's money in Swiss shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Money to be made there.
And apparently the old saying was true. The Swiss do literally shit gold.
Well, at least we know that the Lancasters, or what was their name? From Game of Thrones.
Lannisters.
Lannisters were Swiss.
Okay.
All right.
And I think this is the last part, isn't it?
I'm going
to touch about anything else.
I just want to quickly talk about Dubai.
Ooh.
I'm going to get rid of what I was going to talk about. I'm going to talk quickly about Dubai. Apparently, they have announced that they're going to put their police on electric hover bikes.
Oh, lovely.
Speaking of stereotypes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is they'll be capable of 70 kilometers an hour. Will be flight capable of 25 minutes and carry up to 300 kilograms.
But that's interesting because, like, this is something I mentioned, I think, yesterday in a conversation. Dubai is, of course, one of the Emirates of the United Arab Emirates, and it's a very rich country, naturally. Yes. However, let's not forget that just a few centuries ago, like 100, 200 years ago, the area was known as the Pirate Coast. It was literally the Somalia of its day.
It was.
And look at them today. So what do we know? Maybe there's hope for Somalia.
what we've learned is Somalia is going to get very rich if they find oil.
Or if they
Yeah.
go into Swiss sewage treatment. But yeah,
Worry
unless
about this hoverbike thing. You said 25 minutes of airtime?
Mm-hmm.
it's not much.
And
Fly for
imagine
25 minutes.
So this police officer goes somewhere, he
Mm-hmm.
spends 10 minutes in the air, he can get back.
Mhm.
If he spends
Mhm.
15 minutes in the air going there, he can't get back.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing. Well, this is Dubai. They'll have support. I'm sure.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem that efficient. Okay, sure, you can avoid traffic, I guess, by going into the air.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't see the point. Like, besides the showmanship, I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
see how these are going
again,
to be super
this
effective.
is Dubai. It's a lot of what they do is about show, isn't it?
Well,
Mhm.
on the
I
other
mean,
hand,
look at the buildings they build. They're not really efficable buildings. These people drive in Lamborghinis and Mercedes Benz everywhere. It's all flash.
one good thing
another
that's
thing.
going to come from this is that chases are going to go down because after 10 minutes he's going to get a flashing light and the chase or else.
Yeah, that's it. It'll.
Also, police communications are going to be a lot louder with those propellers. Four of them around the guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You wouldn't want to lean too far forward or put your legs too far back.
Yeah. Guys, unless you have anything else you'd like to discuss,
I think I'm pretty right now.
I'm fine.
I'm done as
Mhm.
well. Then
All right.
I think it's
All right,
time
gentlemen.
for Chris to end it.
Thank you very much, Detox and Kiki, for joining me, Chris, on the first Lounge Room podcast. I hope everybody's having a great day, and we'll see you for the next one.
Hopefully within 2 weeks.
Hopefully, but we're terrible at schedules.
Some
We'll
of
see.
us more than others.
Well, let's cut it off here. We're getting
All right.
here. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.